Okay, so I thought it was important with this particular book review to show you um, that I do not have bedposts. Okay, nor will I ever get them now, especially after reading this book. And I would never let somebody handcuff me to a bed in the first place. This is a review on Gerald's Game. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm in the process of moving right now. I'm unpacking my stuff, and if you saw at the intro of this video, you might have caught it real quick. My bookshelf is slowly being filled. I'm slowly getting books out of boxes, but I wanted to make sure that I got this one out because I had just finished it a few weeks ago, and I've been talking about this on the channel as I've been reading it, just giving you guys my reactions, and boy, oh boy, is this a crazy one. This has been considered one of Stephen King's most underrated books, and I can see why. And a lot of people said that it wasn't filmable, excuse me. And they ended up making a Netflix movie that was pretty good. You know, I had actually seen it first before I had read the book. I think I saw it about a year ago, maybe a year and a half. I can't remember. It's been a bit, and it was before I really had gotten like deep into reading. And I loved the movie then, but then after I read the book and watched it again, it's just the book is just so good that the movie can't compare. I mean, it did a good job in the sense of trying to get some of the tone down, but I don't think it even comes close to touching what this book does and how it makes a person feel, or how it can make a person feel. I don't know how you guys are going to feel about things, but I know how it made me feel reading this book. There's a lot of just really hard things to go through. I'm going to talk about those today. This is going to be like a semi-spoiler review. You know, it's the first full-blown book review I've done so far on the channel. You know, I've done shorts, short reviews, just really quick rundowns of what a book is about, but I haven't really gone through the full, 15, 20-minute review with a book. So I don't know how much I'm going to end up spoiling, to be honest, as I'm talking about it. So if you're the type of person who doesn't want to hear anything about a book, then it's going to be chock full of spoilers. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see as we go. I'm just going to give that warning now that if you don't want to have any spoilers whatsoever, then maybe, move on to another video or wait until you read the book and then come back and see what my opinion was on it. Okay. So this is a book about a couple that goes off to their lake house, their summer house in October. And so all their neighbors who also have summer homes on this lake, they're all gone. So they wanted to go out to a secluded, just quiet retreat, really just trying to rekindle their broken marriage. They, get into this as the book goes on, but they haven't really been a couple that's been too happy with each other, as of late. Things are kind of flat and stale. Gerald really loves kinky sex, and Jessie, who is our main character, his wife, she doesn't really, and she just kind of goes along with it. And when they're at this lake house, he wants to strap her to the bed. He wants to handcuff her to the bed, and she lets him. And as they're going through this, and as he's getting ready to like pretty much pounce on her, it starts going through, what problems Jessie has with all of this in her mind. It starts going through, just various things that have happened in Jessie's past. With Gerald, her experiences with him, starts talking about pretty much how much she kind of is disgusted by him. And she kicks him because she wants to get out of the handcuffs. She starts thinking about how she doesn't really want to do this anymore, and he's not letting her up. She starts saying how, like, she can tell that he's doing it on purpose, right? He's not letting up because he actually likes the fact that she can't do anything about it, and he's essentially going to, SA her. And so she kicks him, and when she kicks him, it kind of ignites this reaction to where he starts having a heart attack, and he falls on the bed, and he dies. It's funny because she starts kind of going through his habits and his lifestyle and everything, and so she's thinking like, okay, it was bound to happen anyway, but did I cause this? Like, did I kill my husband? And when they find me, are they going to blame me for it? And so she's handcuffed to this bed. Her husband's laying there dead, and there's no one around. And when she's strapped there, she starts hallucinating, essentially. She starts like having voices in her head. She starts thinking about the past. And there's these two particular voices that she starts to hear. One of them is an old college roommate who was very bullish and who always spoke her mind. She was the type of person, I want to say that, she like would ditch class and things like that. I can't really remember whether or not that's part of the book, but it was that type of a character. Ruth McNeary. And Ruth is a character who was pushing Jesse on something that I'll bring up a little bit later in this review that comes up in the book, to where Jesse pretty much ditched her as a friend and hasn't talked to her for years. But she's that voice in Jesse's head that's basically like, hey, listen, you need to like get up and go. You need to figure this out. Like, I know you're strapped to handcuffs, but like just laying there freaking out about it, thinking about like, oh my God, am I going to get caught? Like, are they going to think that I killed him? Like, what am I going to do? Isn't going to help you. And so she's that voice in Jesse's head. And then there's one called the Goody Wife, which is basically the one that has been the version of her that just has been compliant, has gone along with what Gerald wants. And that voice is always kind of countering, Ruth and what she's saying to her. And so it's kind of going like a back and forth. I really feel like this is sort of like Castaway, in a sense, because it's just really one character the whole time that you're experiencing. And in this particular one, it's just her voice and then the voices that are in her head. And then she starts to think about some things that happened in the past. I think that really, what this book is about dealing with past trauma, right? And Jessie starts to think about the past. She starts to, come in and out of consciousness because she's strapped to this bed. And you're sitting there. I mean, think about what is she supposed to do? She doesn't have an ability to move. The bedposts are shaped in a way to where she's not going to be able to just slip them over. And there's no neighbors around. I mean, there's nothing that she can do. And she starts thinking about the past and things that had happened to her, and thinking about, like I had mentioned, like she had started thinking in the beginning about what Gerald has kind of done to her over the years in terms of the way he's acted as a husband, and the things that he's just kind of objectified her, and how she's just kind of been compliant and just gone along with it, and how the situation that she's in right now, being strapped to that bed, is kind of just a result of her just being compliant, a result of her just, going along with what other people want, as opposed to finding her own voice and standing up for herself. And so she's thinking about all this. She's having the voices in her head, and then she hears something in the house because the doors were not locked. And it's one of the main doors in the front is one of those like swinging doors. So you don't need to have thumbs to be able to open it. You can just kind of walk through, and there's this stray dog that it cuts to. And you actually get kind of like in Cujo, when it goes between the people and it goes between Cujo's thoughts, you actually get the thoughts of this dog, this stray, and how it's been abandoned by its master. Its name is Prince, and I want to say that it's been out on its own for weeks, and so it's really, really hungry because it's a domesticated animal. It doesn't know how to hunt or anything like that, and so it's just been trying to find food as it can, and it gets to this house, and it smells something, and what it's smelling is Gerald's dead meat, and it's so hungry it goes into the house and it sees Gerald laying there. I think by this point he's been kicked off the bed, or he's fallen off the bed, so he's on the floor. And the dog is like looking up at Jesse, who's strapped to the bed, and looking down at Gerald. And the dog's thoughts are just basically like, well, this is not the right kind of meat. I'm not supposed to be, but I'm also so hungry, and I don't think that she's a threat. She doesn't seem like she's a threat. She doesn't smell like a threat. And so the dog just goes in and knows that he's not supposed to be eating humans, but, he's just in a situation where he can't help it because he's just so starving. And the dog starts eating Gerald in front of Jesse. And so she's laying there strapped to this bed, freaking out, because what if the dog starts to eat her, but also, that's her, even though she doesn't, particularly like her husband anymore, or didn't before he died, it's still, the man that she's, chosen to live her life with for years and years and years, and this dog is just eating him, in front of her. I mean, shit, if it was any kind of a person, a stranger, that would be traumatic, to witness a dog doing that. And so that's the first part of this book where it's like, holy shit, this is wild. And the dog's just, snacking away. And remember that the house is unlocked. And so time starts going on, moving forward. Um, Jesse, starts coming in and out of consciousness, and it's nighttime, and she thinks she sees a figure. She thinks she sees a figure in the corner, and the figure just looks kind of like the boogeyman. If you've ever read that short story by Stephen King, it's just really, his arms are long, they go down to his knees, and he's just got like a face that doesn't look completely human. And he's holding this bag, and he opens the bag and he shows Jesse the bag, and it's got a bunch of bones in there and jewelry and things like that. And he starts moving around and kind of antagonizing her in a sense. And she's talking to herself and talking to those voices in her head. And she's like, "Is this real? Is this something that's really actually happening?" And then she, comes to when the dog is gone, because the dog got scared by the boogeyman, and she doesn't know, what's happening or whether or not that's real. And that's something that she sorts out, throughout the rest of the book, on whether or not that person was real or not. But she sees a footprint, out of the blood, and she thinks that she sees a pearl over by where he was standing. So she's like, "Oh my God, of course, like that person was actually here, but he's not there anymore when it's daylight." And so Jesse's still strapped to the bed, and you know, like I said, she starts to think about things that happened to her in the past, and this is where, you know, I don't know. I guess I've been kind of dragging this on a little bit because I'm trying to avoid talking about this particular part, because this part is what really, really made it hard for me to read. I mean, it took me a little bit to read Gerald's Game, because this particular chapter, or these few chapters, I want to say it was chapter 18. Tough subject, tough topics. Jessie, as I had mentioned, she was, coming to the realization that the situation that she's in is a result of her just being compliant with what other people want, like Gerald wanting to perform these kinky sex, acts on her, and her not really being into it, but just going along with it. And so she starts going further back to when she was 10 years old. And there was an eclipse, and her family was, out at some sort of a vacation house on a lake, and like the situation that she's in now. And it talks about how she has a very special relationship with her father. And, her mother seems actually kind of angry and jealous about it, and treats Jessie a little bit differently than she treats her other kids. And Jessie, loves her dad, and has this kind of like attitude of like, well, we are best friends. I win, in a sense. And she doesn't want to go. They're supposed to be going with like this group of people to watch the eclipse together. And Jessie just wants to stay back and hang out with her dad and grill burgers, and he pushes for it too. It's almost like he kind of eggs it on in a way. And so they end up staying. The mother's a little upset, and blames pretty much Jessie. Not to Jessie's face. Jessie is just overhearing their parents arguing about it, and she throws it in the husband's face. She's like, sometimes you treat her like your girlfriend. And so they're watching the eclipse, and Jessie's all excited. This is the heartbreaking part, is because she just doesn't know what's coming, and she just thinks that she's going to be hanging out with her dad. She doesn't realize that he's set this up on purpose for them to be alone. But she's excited. He tells her to go wear a certain sundress that she has, and she's like, "Oh, I want to make sure that I look pretty for the day, and look nice, and please my father, and." So she gets ready, and she talks about making burgers. And so she's actually a 10-year-old actually grilling burgers for her dad. But she comes out, and he's in nothing but shorts, making these like eclipse glasses for them, so their eyes don't burn out when they look at the sun. And yeah, he molests her when the eclipse is happening. He has her, like, he goes, "Oh, why don't you sit on my lap?" And so she does, and he starts, he starts like touching her, and it's very hard to read, because Stephen King does not hold back from going into details. on what's happening. And the worst part is that you're going through her thoughts as it's happening, like, how she knows that, like, what he's doing isn't right. And just, I'm not going to go into too much detail more, other than that, on exactly what happens. But you do have to read, like, what she's thinking as it's happening, what she's thinking after it happens, when she's upstairs and she can't believe that just happened to her, and she knows that it wasn't right. And the fear that she has when he comes upstairs later on, and he manipulates her into being the one who's like, got to keep it quiet, and wants to keep it quiet, because he's like, oh, I think that we're going to have to tell your mom what happened. And she's panicking. She's like, no, mom will kill me. She already doesn't like me as it is. And he even goes, it stinks that we have to tell her, because we've been having problems, as you know. So he's throwing that in the face too, like, oh, if you tell her, we'll break up the family. And so she promises right there and then that she'll never say a word, and she never does. But obviously, it stays with her, and you're, reading about it now, because it's kind of talking about how that's the start of her just kind of shutting down and being compliant with what the men in her life want. And in this book, I think Stephen King, this is a sister book to Dolores Claiborne. He wrote them both at the same time, and he wanted to write from the woman's perspective in a few books. And I think that I'm not a woman, so I don't know for sure. I'd have to ask a couple of my friends that are women, if they've read this, what they think. But I think he really nails it. I just think he really, really nails it. I really like, for me, I think that when a book makes you feel, even though the topic is really hard to read, like I said, it took me a good couple of weeks to actually go through this, because because that one chapter, or I think maybe it was a few chapters, really, because it kept coming back. But yeah, it kept coming back to that topic. I'm like, really, we're going to go through this again? It was like, yep, we're going to go through it again. But really, just kind of, I don't know. I mean, it just, if a book is going to make you feel something like that, I've talked about it on the channel before, but if it's really going to bring you to a place, to where you're really just, your skin is crawling, or you're just really disgusted, or really kind of let down, then I think that it's really good writing. And you'll understand what I mean if you decide to pick up Gerald's Game. The other hard part of reading this, I said it was kind of like Castaway. I feel like maybe it's more like Castaway meets Saw, because, spoiler alert, she does get out of the handcuffs after she, goes through all of those thoughts of her past, and kind of sorts out, what this is all about, and is talking to the voices in her head. Her inner child, which, her dad used to call her Pumpkin, shows up. And so Pumpkin is the one who really kind of gets her to figure out how to get out of this, out of the situation. She tries a few different things. I mean, there's a scene at the beginning where she's just simply trying to get water, and it's showing how hard it is for her just to get a glass, and the things that can go wrong when she's trying to get that. She had another idea of using lotion, because there was some lotion on a shelf that was like above her where the water glass was, but the lotion falls out of place, and so she feels stuck. And then her younger self kind of shows up and reminds her of something that had happened. That had happened when she was younger, I believe, or just gives her the idea that, hey, you can actually break that glass that you were drinking water out of. And if you do it properly, people, when they are, unaliving themselves, one of the ways that they do it is through, is cutting their wrists. And so she said to her little voice said to her, she's like, if you do it the right way and you don't cut too deep, then you'll be able to slide out. And then also there's not a lot of like pain receptors in that area, which is why people do it in that spot. And so she's literally grabbing this glass and breaking it, and you're at the edge of your seat wondering if she's going to drop it all or if it's not going to work. And it's like Saw, because they talk about this concept of degloving, to where when there's a victim, I guess law enforcement will deglove the person, meaning they'll take their hand off, essentially the skin of their hand off, and wear it like a glove to get fingerprints. which is wild and disgusting. And so she's actually like using her wrists are bleeding, and she's using the blood as a lubricant to pull herself out of these handcuffs. And as it's happening, you're reading about how her hand is being degloved while she's alive, and the tendons and everything. And that's where it just gets really gruesome. But she gets out. She gets out, and she realizes that that she's free, but also that the sun is coming down. And as the book has been going on, she's actually been hallucinating again about the man who was in the corner and whether or not he was real or not. And he had come back at one point and told her that he was going to be back, back at nighttime, and he was going to take her bones. And so the sun is like going down as she was trying to get out of the house, and then she collapses and passes out. When she wakes up, it's dark again, and the guy is standing in Gerald's study with his bag again. She gives him her wedding ring, and she starts like booking it for the doorway towards the Mercedes. And she's trying to get the Mercedes started, and she looks back, doesn't see him, looks back again, and then he's there. And so she just doesn't know whether or not this guy is real or not. Fast forward to her driving away in the Mercedes, and then all of a sudden he's in the back seat, and she crashes the car, and some people find her. And fast forward to months and months later, and she finds out through reading newspapers that this guy actually was real. And this is where the movie kind of gets really corny, because I thought the way that they showed it in the movie and the way that it was portrayed was just super goofy and quick. But she goes to the trial of this guy against one of her friends' wishes, who was one of Gerald's ex-partners, who's been trying to help Jesse through the trauma of this, but then also trying to make sure that he's doing damage control so the firm doesn't look bad. And so Jesse arranges this friend arranges for Jesse to go to this trial anyway, but is like, you cannot make any kind of a scene. But she ends up making a scene because she calls out for the guy because she wants to see if it's the actual person. And it turns out that the person who was in her house was a grave robber who had been going around and digging up people and stealing their bones and their jewelry. And he was in there going after Gerald because he, saw that there was a dead person there. And yeah, he kind of he looks at Jesse and he goes, "You're not real. You're not real. You're made of moonlight." And that's why they call this guy, when you look this book up, he'll be called the Moonlight Man. But I don't know if he was antagonizing her or if he thought that she was a hallucination, like if he was hallucinating her. And on the other end was like, oh, she's not real. So he was feeling the same way that she was. But the book pretty much kind of ends there, around there at least, for the purposes of this review. That's the, parts of this book that I wanted to talk about and the review that I wanted to give on it, because, yeah, man, Gerald's Game is just a wild book, and there's just a lot of really crazy things that happen in it. Goes through some crazy topics, but I think ultimately it's really just about a person who's dealing with past trauma and comes to the realization that she needs to stand up for herself and be her own voice and live life the way that she wants to, as opposed to the way that other people think that she should. And so she's pretty much given a second chance at life in being able to be free of her past handcuffs. And so I think that you should definitely check out Gerald's Game. This is going to go towards the top tier when I put it in my tier review, because I just think that it's up there with like the Pet Cemeteries of the world in terms of the way that it makes your skin crawl. And the author really does a good job of writing in a way that brings you to a dark, disturbing place. But that's it. That's Gerald's Game. Honestly, like 4.8, almost 5-star book. I really loved it. I'm excited for Dolores Claiborne, which I'm going to read. I'll talk about the connections in those two once I read Dolores Claiborne, because I want to give like a thorough, I want it to be a thorough thought, in terms of like how these two books are connected. But they are sister books. I guess Stephen King wanted to release them as just one big book, but his publisher wanted to break them into two, and that's why they're two. But thanks for being here. Please leave a comment. Let me know about this review. Again, this is my first full book review. on just one book. I've been doing a lot of lists lately in starting this channel. And please like and subscribe. Thanks.